Story 1. I've been hypnotizing neighborhood kids with psychedelics for the last 17 years. Tonight, I went too far. I met 12-year-old Bradford only an hour ago. Now his head is smashed in, and he's lying in a pool of blood in the middle of my basement floor. The police will be here any minute to arrest me, no doubt. They'll gather testimony from the other 3 boys that were here tonight, then from the nearly 100 other boys that have visited my basement over the past 17 years. All right, writing that down makes me sound like a pervert, but I'm not a pervert. Let's get that out there. This is my final confession. It all started in the year 2002. I had just graduated with a master's in psychology and was working at Top Hat Video to pay the bills while pursuing research on psychedelic therapy on the side. While exiting the local Cinemark after seeing M. Night Shyamalan signs on opening night, I noticed a group of 4 boys gathered around the ticket booth, one of whom I recognized as a neighborhood kid, Jimmy McConkey. They had just learned that the 11:15 p.m. showing was sold out and were trying to figure out whose mom could pick them up. Jimmy saw me and called out, "Hey, Marcus, how's it going?" "Jimmy, what's going on?" "Signs is sold out," he said, visibly disheartened. "Damn, sorry, man. I just saw it," I said. His face lit up and his friends gathered around. "Well, how was it?" he asked. "It was horrifying," I said. "So good." "Oh, man, well, we'll have to try tomorrow," he said, turning to his friends. They nodded in affirmation. Then I started thinking. My latest research had been on the use of psychedelics to treat early childhood trauma. In theory, the drugs would help access a higher plane of existence, which, with the guidance of a licensed professional, could be used to gain a deeper understanding of the trauma. Of course, much of what I was studying back then is almost common knowledge in progressive psychiatric circles today. LSD, MDMA, and psilocybin, as found in mushrooms, are used regularly in underground guided therapy sessions nowadays. But back then, no way. In the 1960s or 70s? Sure. Early 2000s? No. On a whim, I invited the boys over to my house. I told them I'd give them a preview of signs without spoiling too much. Since the kids still didn't have a ride home, they accepted my invitation. They packed into my Subaru Outback, and I took them to my home. For all the talk about stranger danger, these 12-year-olds were much too confident coming with me. Though again, I had no ill intent. I never did at any point. It sounds so creepy writing it down like this, but a handful of willing kids was exactly what I needed to test my methods. If the combination of psychedelics and hypnosis could work for trauma, why not for fun? I served the 4 of them Pepsi while I got the basement ready. I set up 4 chairs in the middle of my unfinished basement, turned on the surround sound speakers, and got a bell from the storage room. I ground up tablets of MDMA and fed them into the dry powder inhaler. I brought the boys down and invited them to take a seat. "I'm going to set the scene for you," I said, handing them blindfolds. "Imagine you're on a farmhouse in the middle of rural Pennsylvania." Once their blindfolds were fastened, I started the binaural beats on the speakers. "You are surrounded by hundreds of acres of cornfield," I said and rang the bell. I took the powder inhaler to each one and instructed them to inhale on my count. 1, 2, 3. "Breathe in," I'd say, spraying the ground MDMA. "This will help you envision the scene a bit better," I told them. They were giddy with excitement as I walked them through the story. I could tell when the drugs kicked in because their reactions became more animated. Once I realized my power, I'll admit I embellished the details a little bit, but the boys were having the time of their lives. Although I wanted to go deeper, I stuck with the story, making sure to get their permission before veering into spoiler territory. I ended on a strong note, then let the high wear off before driving them home. The boys decided, on their own volition, that they'd tell their parents they saw the movie as planned and that it was fantastic. They knew it was sketchy going over to a single neighborhood man's house under the radar, so they promised each other to keep quiet. As the months went on, that same group of 4 boys returned a few more times, asking me to take them on some sort of adventure. Sometimes they had specific requests: I want to fly. Let's do a haunted house. How about a creepy version of Disneyland, etc. Other times they let me call the shots. The process was simple enough. I played around with drug types and dosages, along with my hypnosis techniques and music. Eventually, I had formulas for every type of occasion. As that group of 4 boys got older, they brought their younger brothers and other neighborhood kids as a kind of sacred rite of passage. In 2007, Jimmy graduated high school. He went on to other things, and I stayed in the same place, continuing my research. Eventually, I got a job teaching Psychology 101 at the community college. By that time, I had myself a group of about 8 regulars aged 12 to 15 that would come over about once a month and allow me to take them on whatever adventure they, or I, wanted. Again, not a pervert. After applying blindfolds, dimming the lights, putting on music, and giving each of them a couple inhales of my special powder, I told them to imagine various scenarios. I'd give only a basic level of detail and allow their drug-infused brains to fill in the gaps. I'll admit I pushed the boundaries sometimes to see what kind of reaction I'd get. It was around the year 2015 when I made my first real breakthrough. I had a group of 6 boys, I think. After the regular setup, I decided to do something a little different. To the best of my recollection, here's how the session went. I want you to imagine you've arrived at an abandoned mansion in the middle of the desert. It's the biggest house you've ever seen. Very dark, very creepy. You open the rusty gate that guards the property and walk through, kicking your feet through piles of moldy leaves. You slip past what remains of the front door and walk in on a grand entrance. Double staircases, a giant crystal chandelier, granite floors. It smells of mildew and dust, like it hasn't been touched in years. Cobwebs cake seemingly every corner. As you step in and take in the utter beauty of this masterpiece of a mansion, you hear something, the faint lull of a cello. Intrigued, you follow the sound, taking you down long, winding corridors to a 2-story library. The shelves are stocked with books, but they are dusty and rotted, much like everything else in the house. The faded sun makes its way through the large stained glass windows, giving off glares of all colors. In the center of the room is a beautiful woman. She is the composite of every beautiful woman you have ever seen. Each of the boys shifted, smiles creeping on their faces. I couldn't help but smile too. That beautiful woman is the one who's playing the cello. She plays with such fervent passion. The way it reverberates through the library sends a chill down your spine. As you stand there, watching her play carefully with seemingly her whole body, you notice that the second-floor mezzanine is beginning to fill up with people. People you know, friends, family, acquaintances. They wear somber looks as they take their place standing above you. None of them seem to notice you standing there. Suddenly, you realize why they're there. Off to the side, behind the cellist, is an open casket. Your heart sinks as you begin to understand the situation you have walked into. You cautiously approach the mahogany casket as the cello croons in the background. You lean forward to get a closer look at the body. There, with taut white flesh, closed eyes, and caked in makeup, is your dead body. One of the boys yelped and fell out of his chair. The others snapped out of hypnosis, ripping the blindfolds off. A couple of them had tears streaming down their faces. I turned off the music and nervously watched them compose themselves in silence. There were so many emotions in the room, I couldn't get a good read on the boys. Eventually, once things relaxed a bit, one of the boys approached me. "I'm going to go home," he said. "Okay, do you need a ride? Are you okay?" I asked. I'll be fine, He paused for a moment, holding back tears. "I've been an asshole to my little brother lately. Now I'm worried that I'll die, or he'll die before I have a chance to make things right. I don't want things to end like this. I want him to know He looked around to the other guys and saw that their emotions seemed to match his own. I want him to know I love him. He walked upstairs, out the front door, never to be seen again. A few of the other boys expressed something similar, that there were a few people in their lives that they had been jerks to, that they had lied to, that they hadn't been nice to. They wanted to make things right. For the first time since I had begun this endeavor, I felt good about myself. It was the first time I had dared do anything meaningful with the therapy, and it seemed to be effective. These boys' lives were changed for good because of this simple session. Fast forward a few years, and I have had almost 100 different boys come to do guided psychedelic therapy sessions with me. They all understood the gravity of keeping it on the down low, a point that tended to be baked into the initial invitation. Tonight, however, I took things too far. Rather than using the therapy as a method to help the boys explore themselves, I attempted to use it as a method to learn the secrets of the universe. Just a few hours ago, a group of 4 boys, 2 of which I had hosted before, stopped by, asking if I could conduct a session. I had nothing else going on aside from a little reading and late-night solo drinking, so I let them in. They had just come from basketball practice. They followed me into the basement and took their seats. The 2 boys that had been there before, Adam and Bryson, explained the process to the 2 new boys, Bradford and Trey. The 2 new boys seemed nervous, as most first-timers are, but they trusted their friends enough to proceed. I started the music, dimmed the lights, and instructed them to place the blindfolds on. I took another sip of whiskey, then walked the inhaler around, giving each boy 3 puffs of my special sauce. Aside from generalities, I don't usually plan these adventures too far in advance. I suppose it was the late-night reading of Lovecraft infused with alcohol and a relentless thunderstorm that led me on tonight's particular excursion. I started the session slowly, allowing about 30 minutes for the drugs to take full effect, all while occasionally ringing the bell. You find yourself in the middle of the woods one evening, the pink sky filtering through thick rows of pine trees. You walk carefully, mindfully through the woods, the soft padding of fallen pine needles cushioning your every step. The boys slouched in their chairs as they fell deeper into hypnosis. As you walk along, smelling the sweet smell of the pines, hearing the chirping crickets, you find a fallen wooden sign half buried in the ground. You dig it out and brush it off. On it reads something quite peculiar. "This way to the end of the world," it reads. You find a tree with an old rusty nail about 6 feet up and determine that this must be what the sign was attached to. You continue trekking through the woods, all while keeping an eye out for whatever the end of the world might be. The further you go into the forest, the darker it gets. Pretty soon, you start to feel something. You start to internalize the gravity of the situation. Although you thought the sign was silly at first, you now believe it. You become confident that you're about to discover something groundbreaking. The chirping crickets suddenly stop. Ahead of you is a metal stairway that leads down into a wide hole, about 50 feet in diameter. You edge closer to the hole and realize that the fading daylight doesn't offer you enough to see the extent of its depth. You consider turning back, but the unwavering sense of curiosity gets the best of you, and you decide to descend the stairs. You go slowly at first, testing the load-bearing of each step carefully. After about 20 stairs, you feel safe and start descending quicker. Another 100 feet down, you happen upon a heavy metal door with rusted bolts and hinges. You push the door hard and it squeaks open, revealing a man playing basketball alone in an empty arena. Each time the ball bounces, it echoes through the building and into the stairwell you occupy. Some of the boys sit upright, smirking. After making a long 3, the man grips the basketball and turns slowly to face you. He walks to you very carefully. As he gets closer, you realize the man is huge. The boys grip their seats. Once he's about 50 feet away, you recognize him. It's LeBron James. The boys laugh in excitement. One of them stands up and pumps his fist. I can't help but chuckle to myself at my spontaneity. LeBron James is probably the only current NBA player I can name. When he gets to the doorway, standing right in front of you, a serious look passes on his face, and he begins to speak. I clear my throat and drop my voice. I know that you think you're just having a fun time, going on a psychedelic adventure, but you have to understand something, he says. This journey is important, very important. What you are doing has the potential to unlock all the mysteries of the earth. You just have to keep going. Promise me you'll keep going. One of the boys swallows hard. All of them nod in agreement. Then the ball he's holding turns to fire. He dribbles it a few times and spins it on his finger, apparently unfazed. He hands you the ball, and you hold it with both hands. The flames dance around the ball without burning you. This will help light your path, he says, then slams the door. LeBron James is gone. You continue down the stairwell, your path lit by the flaming basketball. After another hour of descending the stairs, you reach a second door. This one is equally heavy and rusty as the first. As you push it open, you hear the sound of waves crashing. You lean your shoulder into the door, as you did with the first one, and shove it open. Sand spills onto your feet. You look upon a beautiful, endless beach of white sand bordered by blue, crashing waves on one side and lush jungle vegetation on the other. A cool, saltwater mist touches your skin. When you hear the ding of the bell, the sun will disappear, I said. 1, 2, 3. I dinged the bell and waited for a moment. A couple of the boys leaned forward. You can still hear the waves crashing and feel the ocean mist. But the world is pitch black. No stars, no moon. You can only see the few feet of sand in front of you, as illuminated by the flaming basketball. As you focus on the sound, you hear someone walking toward you. When I count to 3 and ding the bell, the sun will reappear and your mother will be standing there. 1, 2, 3. I dinged the bell again. The boy smiled nervously. This woman brought you into the world. She fed you, clothed you, changed your diapers. Your mother sacrificed so much for you. You feel this. In this moment, you internalize an undying gratitude for your mother. You would do absolutely anything for her. You'd take a bullet for her or jump in front of a bus. Absolutely anything. I wait for a moment, allowing my words to marinate. Your mom stands in the sand about 50 feet back, looking at you with a smile. She invites you in, but you can't move. You're stuck in the stairwell. As soon as you realize this, you see someone else approach. A man dressed head to toe in black emerges from the jungle with a machete. His identity is concealed by a leather black mask. Your mom continues to smile, unaware of the man in black approaching. You try to call out, but you can't speak. You wave your hands furiously until she pays attention. A look of fear passes over her. As she turns around to confront her attacker, the man hits her over the head, knocking her unconscious. You notice for the first time that there is a large cage in the sand behind the attacker. The man drags your unconscious mother into the cage, slams the door, and locks it. You look at her limp body sprawled out on the metal floor of the cage and are filled with rage. You try to move again but can't. You try to scream but can't. The man in black notices you and approaches. When he is standing right in front of you, he dangles the key to the cage and laughs a deep, ugly chuckle. He then throws the key out of the door, over your head. You hear it clank down the staircase, disappearing far, far below you into the void. The man pulls his mask off, revealing a horrific, warped face with gaping, bloody holes where his eyes should be. He speaks again. One more door. The door slams shut, booming into the stairwell. One of the boys shakes his head furiously. The others look angry. It's working, I thought. As you continue descending the stairs, lit by the flaming basketball, you feel brave and confident. Like you can confront whatever lies in the third and final door. You can get the keys to the cage. You can save your mother, and you can find the secrets to the end of the world. You just have to keep going. You have to be. Thunder cracked outside, loud enough to make me jump and snap the boys out of hypnosis. They ripped their blindfolds off and stumbled to their feet, breathing heavily. "Oh my God, that was intense," Adam said. "You don't want to keep going?" I asked. "Man, that was enough for one night. Great trip, though. I love meeting LeBron James. That felt so real." "Didn't that feel real?" Trey said to the others. They nodded in agreement. "Damn lightning woke you guys up," I said. "Well, thanks for having us over, Mr. Marcus," Bryson said, picking up his hat. As they started up the stairs, I noticed that not all of them snapped out of the hypnosis. Bradford sat still, blindfold on, still gripping his chair. "Should I wake him?" I asked the others. This was Bradford's first session, and I didn't want him to freak out when he awoke. "You guys go ahead. I'll wait for Bradford to wake up," Adam said. Bryson and Trey disappeared a couple minutes later after making plans with Adam to meet up at Bradford's house when Adam then took a seat in the corner, excited to watch the session with Bradford proceed. You continue descending the stairs. "A blast of cool air blowing past you," I said. Bradford visibly shivered. "What's your strategy?" Adam whispered to me. I turned the music up, allowing Bradford a few minutes to descend the stairs. I walked over to Adam. "The key is to get each of the patients in touch with as many emotions and feelings as possible. Happy, sad, afraid, amused, etc. Then I try to create sensory experiences, exposing them to heat, cold, smells, tastes, etc. The more the hypnosis can infiltrate their brain, the more effective it is." "What's your end goal with this session?" Adam asked. I smiled. "We have 5 senses, right?" "Yeah. Sight, smell, touch, taste, and what's the last one?" "Hearing," I answered. He nodded. "But a lot of our brain is unused, right?" I posed. "Yeah. So what if we can experience other senses, but don't know how to activate them?" I asked. "Like in the same sense that birds or whales know how and when to migrate, or how any number of animals and insects can locate food or water in almost any scenario. They have these intuitions that we don't quite understand. And you think these sessions can activate those extra senses? I don't know if it's possible to activate them in the real world necessarily, but I do believe that we can activate them within the hypnosis." "What kind of senses?" I took another sip of my whiskey. "It's still a theory, but I think we can tune our inner antenna, so to speak, to understand the secrets of the universe." "Like what?" "Like if we're alone in the universe. Like how all this came to be. Like what happens to the souls who have passed," I said. Adam sat in contemplation for a moment, then smiled. "Damn, well, let's hope Bradford can bring us home," he said. I tipped my glass to him, sipped my whiskey, then took my place at the front of the room. Bradford hadn't moved an inch. As you descend the stairs, you begin to hear voices calling from above. You hear your dad, your siblings, your friends. They all voice their support. "You can do it. Keep going. You're almost there. Be brave." Bradford sat up tall in his chair. Getting closer, I thought. The flaming basketball finally finds an end to the staircase. You step onto a cobblestone landing and look around you. You have descended into a large silo of some kind, maybe a cave or a well, with nothing but a door of similar size and configuration as the first two against the wall. On the ground, a flicker of light reveals the location of the cage keys wedged between 2 stones. However, before you pick the keys up, you realize that you must first open the door. Just then, someone descends the stairs behind you, but you don't feel scared. The person steps into the light of the flaming basketball, and you realize that it's you. You are standing face to face with yourself. He smiles at you, and you smile back. Bradford smiled, and I looked to Adam. He gave me a thumbs up. The other you puts his hand on your shoulder and looks into your eyes. He's almost like a more self-assured version of yourself. He's fearless. He's brave. He's a hero. You must understand, he says. You have been endowed for this mission. You were chosen long ago for this mission. Behind this door lies a cloud of knowledge. When you open the door and step inside, you will be immersed in this cloud. You will be met with a deep understanding of the mysteries of the universe. You will see the origins of creation. You will understand the immensity of all that exists. You will know these things and understand them in a way that will allow you to communicate your findings to others in the real world. I took a deep breath and looked over to Adam again for approval. He nodded, a look of utter anticipation on his face. "Do it," he mouthed. The other you stands aside and disappears, leaving nothing between you and the door. You understand what you must do. You take 3 steps forward, place one hand on the cold metallic door, and apply pressure. As you do so, you feel something trickling down your upper lip. You stop pushing and wipe your nose. You are bleeding. Adam and I watched Bradford carefully for about 15 seconds before he gently wiped his nose. He motioned his head to look down at his hand and opened his mouth in surprise. There was blood, actual blood on his hands. "Holy shit," Adam whispered to me. Frankly, I was more shocked than he was. Bradford was my first completely immersed patient. He was in my complete control. This was not an empowering thought, mind you. It was a horrifying one. I briefly considered pulling the plug on the whole thing right then, guiding him away from the door and back up the staircase to the real world. But I didn't. Goddamn Lovecraft. I swallowed hard and held my bell steady. "Now I'm going to count to 3 and ring the bell. When you hear the bell, you will push open the door and become immersed in the cloud. After a few moments in the cloud, I will ring the bell and you will exit the cloud and close the door behind you." I repeated the instructions, then took a deep breath. "Here we go," I mouthed to Adam. He nodded. 1, 2, 3, I said, then dinged the bell. Bradford jolted, flailing his arms and grunting. His chair rocked violently. I instructed Adam to steady it, so he didn't tumble off. How responsible of me. The jolting stopped after a minute, and Bradford sat still. Both his nostrils were bleeding now. "Now, when I ring the bell again, you will exit the room and close the door behind you. 1, 2. Bradford stood up abruptly, sending the chair and Adam sprawling onto the floor behind him. He ripped his blindfold off and looked around frantically like a trapped animal. "Bradford, it's all okay," I said, but I knew it wasn't. He didn't wake up on his own volition, nor was there an external stimulus to wake him up, my bell or a loud noise like the thunder before. Something inside of the hypnosis woke him up. Adam stumbled to his feet. "Bradford, it's all right, buddy. It's me, Adam, right here," he said and reached for him. "No," I yelled. "Don't touch him. Come here," I told him. Adam obeyed and stood next to me against the wall. Bradford looked around anxiously for another minute, his feet unmoving, then fixed his eyes on the concrete block wall on the opposite side of the room. "Stay here," I said to Adam. I walked to the other side of the room, between Bradford and the wall, the bell clutched in my hand. Frankly, I didn't know what to do. I had to assume he was still under some kind of hypnosis, though I didn't know whose. "Bradford, when I count to 3 and ring the bell, you will come out of hypnosis. Again, when I count to 3 and ring the bell, you will come out of He bolted straight at me, knocking me to the side and plowing straight into the wall, head first. "Shit!" I yelled, stumbling back to my feet. Adam ran over. Between the two of us, we held Bradford down. He had a large gash on his head and a steady stream of blood pouring down his face. But he didn't seem to be in pain. "Bradford, listen to me," I said. He turned his head toward me, revealing jittering pupils, as if there was an earthquake behind those eyes. Adam was crying. His phone buzzed across the room, diverting our attention for a moment. "Do we call the cops?" he asked. "Yes, call 911, I said, trying incoherently to piece together a story in my head. Once Adam got to his phone on the other side of the room, Bradford began seizing, knocking me on my ass. I backed up, recognizing my feeble body to be no match for his apparent raw animal strength. "Please, Bradford, breathe with me," I said. He again eyed the block wall and ran at it with full force, his skull crunching on impact. Blood spattered on the wall and the floor. He fell onto the ground with a hollow thud. Adam screamed. I tried to lay Bradford's lifeless body straight when his eyes shot open, a look of pure terror on his face. "No!" he screamed and rolled away from me. He got onto his hands and knees, breathing heavy. As I carefully eased toward him, he let out a loud grunt and began hitting his head on the concrete floor with inhuman intensity. The sound of his head repeatedly crunching against the floor like that will haunt me forever. Blood continued to pool beneath him. I backed away from him, helpless. Adam screamed in horror. After 5 or 6 hard hits, Bradford finally collapsed onto the ground, splashing in his own blood. Tears were streaming down my face. Adam was sobbing uncontrollably. A few moments passed in bone-chilling silence. "Did you call anyone?" I asked with a shaky voice. Adam stared unblinking at Bradford's mangled head resting on the ground. "Adam?" He snapped out of it. No, he said, swiping through his phone. "Okay, the story, our story," I started. Then Adam's eyes grew wide. "What?" I asked. "The others, Trey and Bryson," Adam said, staring at his phone with his hand covering his mouth. "What is it?" I asked. "When they got to Bradford's house, they found Bradford's mom on the kitchen floor," he said and looked up at me. "She's dead." "Shit," I said. "It's the hypnosis." "It has to be," Adam said. "No, that's impossible. The hypnosis can't control someone who isn't under hypnosis," I said nervously. "It can't be related." "No way." "You said that the goal is to tap into other senses, right? To activate other parts of the brain?" Adam said. "Well, yeah, that's a theory. But either way, how would that kill Bradford's mom?" "I don't know. The only thing I can think of is that clearly Bradford was all in. I mean, you hypnotized him into a bloody nose, didn't you? Maybe when you put our moms in a cage on the beach." "I don't know," he said, and slipped his phone into his pocket. "Oh shit, I need to check on my mom," he said, and darted up the basement stairs. Now I sit here in my cold, mildewy basement with this dead boy's body, penning my final haunting confession. For the record, I want to apologize to Bradford's family. I take full responsibility for his death. And in the case that I am the cause of Bradford's mother's death, I apologize for that too. I don't really want to think through the scientific implications, if that is the case, to be honest. All I know is that whether I spend my days as a free man or behind bars, I don't know that I'll ever be able to sleep again, wondering what Bradford saw when he opened that door and stepped into the cloud. Something he saw drove him to this madness. That much is clear. I hear the police sirens outside now. One last note to the psychiatric community, or those who may be looking to build upon my research. Some things are better left unknown. Story 2. The orangutans are skeptical of changes in their cages. "Is this a new couch?" I asked. The psychologist looked at the couch. "No, same as always." "New chair?" "No." "New glasses?" "No." "Are you the same doctor?" The psychologist paused. "Yes." He scratched his head and sighed. Father sighed the exact same way often. He opened his desk drawer and pulled out a small rectangular bottle of Jim Beam. He raised the bottle to his lips, avoiding eye contact with me, and took a sip. Then he offered the bottle to me. "Take a swig." "What?" "I'm retiring in a week. I'm leaving." "Take a swig." I took the bottle of whiskey, unscrewed the cap, and took a sip. "This isn't whiskey," I said after swallowing. "You're right. It's brandy. You notice that. You're fine. You overreact. You're a clam." "Excuse me. It's all the same to a clam." Shel Silverstein wrote that. Would you call a clam stupid because it doesn't notice when prodded by a fish or stepped on by a human? Maybe. The clam functions well enough. But I'm not a clam. And this wasn't whiskey. I shook my head. I'd guessed that it wasn't whiskey. I had no idea that it was actually brandy. The psychologist must have realized this. I wish he did. "You don't think my problem is a problem?" I asked. "It's not. It's a peculiarity, nothing more. Your mother's been missing for 6 years and you never noticed. It's unobservant, but not abnormal. Your father has accused you of her murder. I've seen families more dysfunctional. You took the bus here, all on your own. You are completely normal. Do not let anyone ever tell you otherwise. The fact that you can't naturally observe is just a peculiarity and nothing more." I looked around and scratched the cuticles on my thumbs with my pointer fingers. "Did you switch my room? Something looks different." It was a bad habit, the cuticle scratching. All of my habits were, I suppose. My cuticles were red and raw with hints of blood. I rested 2 fingers against my lips every once in a while, a habit reminiscent of my time as a smoker. My fingers felt yellow, like the old glow from a night spent binge smoking until 4 in the morning. Except my smoking had never been from going out with friends. No, I spent hours at night staring at a certain spot, the coffee shop by the bridge, the park with the lights on the trees, even my own home, wondering what looked different. Nothing felt different. That was the problem. Nothing ever felt different. "Not only did we not switch your room, but every room here is exactly the same," said the orderly. "So even if we had switched you to a new room, still nothing would look different." The orderly wore white. He had brass skin, and his forearm muscles twitched when he spoke. The hair on his forearms was thick and blonde, and looked like a memory of wheat. He had dark eyelashes and a heavy nose that seemed to melt from his face. His baggy white pants looked comfortable. It seemed a shame that wearing them out in a social setting would be abnormal. The orangutans are skeptical of changes in their cages. Did the orderly ever wear different pants? When I was 8 or so, while at school, my parents switched my bed for a bunk bed and moved all my older brother's things into my room, I said. Or maybe I switched into his room. He had a lot of things, clothes and furniture, but also posters, like that Captain Marvel poster, the one where he looked like he was about to dive back down to Earth from the clouds. He had a lot of stuffed animals and action figures as well. Mostly Captain Marvel stuff. He had a few Wonder Woman toys, but he kept those hidden. I used to tease him and call them Barbies. He would punch me for saying that. I didn't notice when he went off to college. I didn't notice when he came back. I didn't notice that, while he was gone, Father made the empty bedroom his office. I didn't notice Mother was missing. I didn't notice any of those things. Who knows why a butcher needs an office? Either way, I didn't notice. My brother asked where Mother was. I hadn't thought about it until he asked. He and I found out at the same time that she'd been missing for 6 years. My brother and Father had gotten into a fight. He came back all of a sudden, my brother. It all makes me feel stupid. So much happened, and I tell it as it was told to me, not as I experienced it. You're not stupid. That's kind of you to say, orderly. So anyway, my brother insisted I see a psychologist. Father would grimace at me. He would say, even the orangutans are skeptical of changes in their cages. He would give me steak every day because I don't like change. That line is from a Simon and Garfunkel song. I tried to be skeptical then. I knew I'd always have steak for dinner. I was always skeptical. Am I the only skeptical orangutan around here? Yes, there has been no change in your cage. Not that a change would be easy to notice. I wiggled my toes. I was barefoot because walking the hallways without shoes allowed me to feel the cool tile on my feet. There was something relaxing in pacing a small room barefoot. I shifted my weight and began picking at my eyebrows as I looked around the room. The walls were beige with a horizontal line of blue. The floor, tan tile. Details. My psychologist thinks I don't have a problem. You guys think I do. I feel like a caged orangutan that doesn't move. The kind that if you had to describe it, you'd think it was depressed. That's how Father looked at me, like I was a depressed, confined orangutan. The orderly didn't reply. I sighed. So when can I leave here? After the trial, maybe. No, I mean, when will I be fixed? I keep having the feeling you guys are going to test me by making a change in my room and seeing if I notice. We don't do that. We're here to help you, not play tricks on you. You know that, don't you? My psychologist tests me, I said. I tapped my forehead, imagining a conversation where the orderly told me to take control. Unshakable habits beget unfavorable function. Something like that. That's what the psychologist said. I scratched my cuticles and looked at the orderly's pants. Are those Dickies? My pants? Yeah, they look comfortable. Is that an elastic waistband? You have the same pants, except yours are blue. I felt my waist. I hadn't given my pants a thought. If someone had blindfolded me, I'd haven't the slightest idea what pants I was wearing. Is that normal? Yeah, everyone here wears the same pants. Sorry, not that. I was thinking that it's strange that I'd have no idea if what I'm wearing is different than normal. Isn't that odd? That's not for me to decide. I'd like to be able to notice change, I said. The orderly scratched his head. The doctor has diagnosed you with neophobia. Do you know what that is? A fear of change. Exactly. But I'm not afraid of change. I just wish I'd notice it naturally. The orderly shook his head as he left the room. I don't know what to tell you, but I believe you. I don't think you murdered your mother. A lawyer looked at me with an eyebrow raised, but also with his nose crinkled a little. So you never noticed your mother's absence? He said. I shook my head. No, Father never mentioned it. I know this is my second day in court, but I'm not sure if you're the same lawyer I spoke to yesterday. The courtroom didn't look like a courtroom. It looked like a room. Yes, the judge sat on a raised platform, but everyone else sat on folding chairs. Yes, the jury sat behind a wooden bar, but the room was carpeted, and there were only 3 people in the audience who all looked vaguely familiar. Everyone looked vaguely familiar when out of context. The lawyer turned to the jury. Why is that something that would need mentioning if you already knew? I didn't know. Are you the same lawyer as last time? I asked. The lawyer raised an eyebrow and turned back to me. I'm not your lawyer. I work for the DA. How did you not know? I thought I already answered this to the other lawyer. Isn't that why the judge sent me to the facility? Don't you already understand? I'm not an orangutan. There was a second lawyer. He nodded at me, a reassuring nod. The district attorney looked confused. I'm sure I looked confused too. The orderly leaned against the frame of the doorway. Tough day in court? I'm just glad to be back, I said. It's comforting here. I like the padded floor and walls. I don't like it out there. I can never shake the feeling that everyone's playing a big trick on me, moving things around and laughing because I don't notice. I hate it when people laugh at me. The orderly had brass skin and thick blonde hair on his arms. He had a heavy nose and dark eyelashes. His forearms were thick like an ape's. He looked familiar, but you could never be too certain. Everyone looked vaguely familiar to me. Are you the... Yes, same as always. Is this the same room? The orderly looked at me curiously. You really don't remember? You even mentioned it to me yesterday. The tan walls with the blue horizontal stripe. Now today, padded walls. So this is a different room? I said, wide-eyed. I began scratching my cuticles. I don't like being surprised by change. I don't have a fear of change. No one likes surprises. Yes, this is a different room, so you don't hurt yourself. Your lawyer's request, actually, says bad news is coming. None of you understand me. Father understands me. He gives me steak every day for dinner and for breakfast. I hate change because I don't notice it. But Father understood. He'd tell me all day that we'd be having steak, then we'd have steak, and I knew nothing had changed. The orangutans have nothing of which to be skeptical. I knew I'd be having steak. I wouldn't have noticed if one day I didn't, but it was more comforting not having to worry about not noticing a change. Steak every day? I envy you, man. I love steak. Well, after a while, he would switch to hamburgers, probably because it was too expensive to give me steak every day. But then we'd go back to steak. We alternated. I didn't like the burgers as much, though. That's understandable. The burgers made me sick sometimes. I wouldn't notice that he'd switch to burgers. They made me sick sometimes with their crunch. That's why I started seeing the psychologist. Why would you see a psychologist for a crunchy hamburger? Oh, not about that. Sorry. I mean, mother missing for 6 years and I never noticed. That's what I was thinking. That's crazy. I love her. That's why I began seeing the psychologist. When I found out she'd been missing for 6 years and I never noticed. But now I'm here, in this psychiatric facility. Perhaps this is where I belong. I scratched my cuticles with my pointer fingers. Wherever I was, I'd always been there. Whomever I met, I'd always known. Whatever I ate, I'd always eaten. Whatever I'd think, I'd always thought. Not noticing change meant never getting excited, never pleasantly surprised, never owning, never having, just seeing, never observing. I recognize this, but unless I made a conscious effort to observe, everything passed by me unnoticed. That's crazy, said the orderly, but I'm certain you'll be out of here soon. You'll continue seeing your psychologist, and you'll slowly get better. You don't deserve to be here. That much is obvious. Imagine two boxes of chocolates, if you will. One is uncovered, one is covered. Both are yours. You would notice immediately if the uncovered had missing chocolate. Missing chocolates from the covered, however, could only be noticed once the cover was removed. This is how the butcher's son lives his life. Every uncovered box in his world is covered. While you or I would notice missing chocolates immediately by just glancing at the box, he wouldn't notice unless he actively wanted a piece of chocolate and it wasn't there. A favorite sofa, even if it were the only piece of furniture in his otherwise empty home, would only be noticed as missing once he intended to sit on it, and not a moment before. The rest of us would notice the second we set foot inside the home. And his father kept feeding him steak. He pointed out the front door of the courtroom, for some reason, instead of at me in the witness stand. I guess Father was here too, somewhere. I hadn't seen him since this case began. The DA stood. Objection! Move to strike! The other lawyer turned to the judge. It's all about the evidence, Your Honor. The judge looked at both clients. Overruled. I want to see where this goes. Same couch? The psychologist looked at me like I'd covered myself in shit. He didn't reply to my question. He really did not like me. It was the exact same look Father always gave me. I'd been released from the psychiatric facility. I wasn't guilty. I did not murder Mother. Now both Father and Mother were missing. I just needed to see my psychologist. The orderly looked apologetic as I left. I'd taken the bus straight here. The psychologist always made himself available to me. He felt sorry for me too, I think. Yes, this is the same couch, the psychologist said, sighing. He took a swig from his bottle of Jim Beam. Do you understand what happened in court today? Pity was common. People always felt sorry for me because of my debilitating stupidity. The orangutans are skeptical of changes in their cages. They are especially skeptical of the clam. Yes, apparently Father is now the alleged murderer of my mother. I only get to see bits and pieces of the trial when I'm on the stand, but I'm not stupid. I could figure that much out. I still can't believe it. The psychologist stood from his chair and walked to the window. He stared at the parking lot down below. I watched him, wondering what I missed. That's why I hated change. I obviously missed something, but I had no idea what. I missed something. The psychologist's complexion became slightly pale, but also a tinge green, as if he suffered from food poisoning. He turned, grabbed his keys from the desk and coat from the hook by the door. "Come with me," he said. "This will all be over soon. We're going out for lunch." "Lunch?" The psychologist held the door open for me. "Yes, let's go." I wrapped my fingernails on the table. Why were we out to lunch at Outback Steakhouse? The waiter approached. "What will we be having today?" "One steak," said the psychologist, for the young man across from me. "You're not eating?" I asked. "Not right now, no. That's all, thanks." The waiter nodded and left. I looked around the restaurant. A giant boomerang hung from the wall. "Do Australians actually use that?" The psychologist cleared his throat. "Do you understand what happened in court?" I nodded. "Father is wanted for the alleged murder of mother. They think he did it. I didn't do it. Mother's body was never found, so I'm not sure why they think there's a murder to be solved. Maybe she just left." "That's what I've been saying." "No, she didn't just leave. She was murdered. Your father is guilty." I grimaced. "I don't think so, but either way, he's been missing since the verdict. I'm sure he's off trying to find her now." The psychologist spoke slowly. "Your father, the butcher, cooked you steak every day." "Yes, he understood how I didn't like change. I don't notice it and it makes me nervous and uncomfortable. He'd tell me we'd have steak and that I'd always be having steak, and I always did. If he never repeated himself, then one day gave me fish or chicken or something, I'd never notice. I know it doesn't sound like a big deal, but I hate not realizing that something is different. I'm smart enough to realize how brain dead this all makes me. I wish so badly I could notice change, because then I'd be completely normal. But I can't, and I hate that so much. Most messed up people like me can't imagine what they're missing. I can imagine it. I see normal and know I'll never be that. But I've accepted that, I guess. The waiter returned and placed the steak in front of me. "Is this definitely steak?" I asked. The waiter looked at the psychologist and then back at me with a slight grin. He thought I was joking. I wasn't. "It's definitely steak." "Okay." The psychologist frowned at me. "Try it." A strange bubbling grew in my stomach. I began to feel nauseous. I really did not want the steak. It didn't look good at all. It looked weird. I scratched my cuticles. "I'm not really hungry." "Eat the steak." "I really don't want it." I scratched my cuticles harder. The scabs made way for fresh blood. "I'm not going to ask again." "Eat the steak. Now." I stared at the psychologist. He glared back at me. I really did not want the steak. "Now," he repeated. I begrudgingly stabbed the beef with my fork, cut off a chunk, and placed it in my mouth. "Notice anything?" he asked as I chewed. I felt nauseous but forced it down. I placed the fork down and took a large sip of water. I did not want to be here, and I did not want to eat the steak. "No, of course not." "Nothing?" I shook my head. "Nothing?" "Take another bite now. What you have there is a T-bone steak. That's an expensive cut. From the short loin and, if the butcher did it right, a tiny piece of the tenderloin. That's my favorite part of the T-bone steak." The psychologist pointed again. "Take another bite." I forced myself to pick up the fork, cut off another piece, and chew. "It doesn't taste different to you?" The nausea subsided. I chewed slower. "I suppose I'm enjoying this taste more than I remember enjoying the taste of Father's steak." "So, you notice a difference?" "I suppose I do. Yeah." So I'll just tell you exactly what someone without your condition would notice. He would have immediately noticed that the steak he's eating now tastes far different from the steak his father fed him. He would have noticed it looked way different, smelled way different, and even felt way different. He would? Immediately. You never liked your father's steak. That's true. But you like this steak. I kept on eating. Yeah, I guess I do. The psychologist pressed on, his hands clenched on the table, a weird grin on his face. Your mother's body was never found. We can't even be sure that she was murdered. I already told you, she was murdered. You never had steak for dinner, the psychologist said. He looked excited. He was smiling. Yes, I did. I had steak for dinner and for breakfast. The psychologist shook his head, smirking. No, you didn't. You had steak before your mother died, but after she died, father cooked steak every day. No, 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 no. The psychologist's smile broadened by the second. He looked deranged now. You never had steak for dinner because you wouldn't know the difference. The orangutans are skeptical of changes in their cages. The clams, well, it's all the same to the clam. Your father killed your mother. Your father killed a lot of people. You had meat for breakfast and dinner, but it wasn't beef. No, it was never beef. Your father had a room, your brother's old room. That room became your mother's. Your father prepared your every meal, every day, but it was never steak. I dropped my fork. It clanged on the table. I dropped the knife too. It was hard to breathe now. I missed something. The psychologist began laughing hysterically. He grabbed his mustache and pulled. It came right off. He took off his glasses. I missed something big. It was hard to breathe. He was laughing so hard. You still don't recognize me. You're so stupid. This disguise cost $2. He took a handkerchief out of his pocket and dabbed tears from his eyes. The handkerchief was stained heavily with blood. You never had steak. For dinner, you had your psychologist, he said, wagging the handkerchief. And for breakfast, you had your mother. Story 3. If you see a rest stop on Clear Creek Road, keep driving. It was late. I had probably been driving for over 10 hours trying to make it home in Allentown. I've traveled across New Hampshire most of my adult life as a professional truck driver hauling logs, and on most nights I can tell you that I can handle the long hauls from Allentown, Penn State up to the White Mountains. But bad weather can make you run out of your drive time fast. Typically when that happens, I'll find a shortcut down some of the shorter, narrower roads that 18-wheelers probably shouldn't venture and cut my time in half. That was what happened when I decided to take a turn on Clear Creek Road. Now, I'm sure some of you have heard the rumors and wondered, is the road really haunted, like they say? Well, until last night, I would have told you no. In fact, I have probably taken the road plenty of times before and not even thought about it. But this particular night, I knew that my drive time was running out and I would need to find a place to stop for the night. I kept checking the time, wondering if I could get to the next state highway before the minutes ran out. But as my heavy wheels kept clogging on the road, I knew it wouldn't be possible. Then I saw a neon sign shine in the darkness. Mel's Meals, open 23 hours a day. It was a rest stop. Out here, I had never seen a rest stop on this road before. There was another truck already parked, and I could almost smell the food coming from the diner. The GPS told me it was another 20 minutes before my next turn. I knew something didn't feel right, but I was so tired. I decided if someone else had decided to stop here, then it must be safe. Screech, I activated my air brakes and grabbed my big 72 Oz cup I bought a while back and checked the time. 7:13 p.m. I knew it was later than that. Had to be. It was so dark. I walked toward the diner and then looked at the other trucker that had pulled in to catch a night's rest. I didn't recognize the logo on the side of the truck. The truck itself looked old and rusted, like it had been built in the 80s. Then I heard a sound that made my heart skip a beat. It shuddered and boomed and shook the trailer. I heard this loud screeching noise like massive claws against the metal as I backed away and looked toward the cab. Pop! A man wearing a full body suit jumped from the cab and moved toward the trailer with something glistening in his right palm. It looked like an electric cow prod. My mind raced as I watched him unlatch the trailer and climb inside. I heard more screams, the rattling of chains and the loud shock of the cattle prod zapping whatever was inside. Then he climbed out and latched the gate back. He didn't seem to notice me at all and placed the weapon back in his cab before climbing in and shutting the door. I wasn't about to approach him and ask what that was all about. In fact, if I still had remaining drive time, I would have left right there and then. But our trucks are monitored by the company I work for, and any sort of violation like that would put me out of work without question. So I mustered up some courage and walked inside the diner. As I expected, it was almost entirely empty, save for one waitress and a cook I caught a glimpse of in the small window to the rear. A bell jingled softly on the door as I walked in, and the spunky blonde waitress smiled cheerfully toward me. "Evening, Hoss. Welcome to Mel's Meals. I'm Cindy," she said excitedly as she trotted off to get a menu. A scratchy version of Little Less Conversation played on the jukebox as I followed her to an open booth. She passed me a menu, but when I looked at it, the brochure actually seemed unnecessary. "Something wrong, hun?" Cindy asked as she smacked some bubble gum. "There's only one item on the menu," I pointed out. How special I was starving. I ordered it and asked for a glass of tea. Then I heard that familiar jingle and saw another man walk into the diner. At first I thought it would be the spandex-loving driver I had just seen, but this man didn't look familiar to me at all. He was wearing cowboy boots that made soft clinks on the tile floor, and a biker jacket and an Outback hat. He took a look at me, and I smiled halfway. "With a get-up like that, you sure stand out like a sore thumb," I told him. He didn't even bother to make a response to me and just shimmied over to the bar, taking off his hat and then asked in a gruff voice for a coffee. I glanced out toward the parking lot, but still noticed that there were only 2 trucks. Where had the stranger come from? I checked the clock on the wall, surprised again to find that it hadn't changed a minute since I got here. "Enjoy some hash browns while we cook up your order, hun. They're on the house," Cindy said, placing a plate in front of me. They had rearranged the food to look like a smiley face. I made a little chuckle and started to eat. The food was good. The music was a tad off, but I was starting to relax for just a minute when the cook came out carrying a large silver platter with some meat on it. It was still sizzling so loud that I could hear it as he put it down in front of me. "First time here?" he asked me. I looked at the tattoo on his arm and remarked, "Mel was your wife?" "My sister ran this diner for years before she gave me keys to the kingdom," he said as he wiped grease from his face. "Do you get a lot of business?" I asked, looking about. Besides the cowboy and I, the place was still deserted. "Nah, you know how rumors spread in a place like this," he said with a chuckle. He was really friendly, and the food looked so good I couldn't say no. He walked back to the kitchen, and I reached for my fork to chow down. Then I felt a strong grip on my shoulder and looked up to see the cowboy standing there over me. "Howdy, stranger," I told him, hoping to be jovial. "You don't want to be here," he whispered. "I'm sorry?" I asked, looking at his eyes. "Put your silverware, pick up your keys, and leave this place," he said. He was staring straight towards Cindy. No, not to her, but to the clock right behind her head. It still hadn't moved past 7:13. "Sorry, friend. I know you probably mean well, but I'm not going anywhere tonight," I told him as I reached for my fork again. The bell jingled again before I could take a bite. The man in the bodysuit was entering, and he didn't look happy. He was pacing the doorway as Cindy walked up to him. "Don't let them fool you," the cowboy said as he released his grip on me and shuffled his way back to his seat. The waitress and the newcomer were having what seemed to be a heated discussion, but I could only pick up bits and pieces of it above the music. Not now. This came to early shipment, supply, and demand. Then I heard the noise again, louder than ever before, coming from the trailer, coming from hell itself. This time I dropped my fork. As it clattered to the floor, Cindy gave me a half smile. "Sorry to disturb you, sir. Just talking shop," she replied, and then gave the spandex man a stink. He actually looked downright hilarious wearing that skin-tight suit in here, and I was too intrigued to eat. He walked back toward his truck, and I watched out of the corner of my eye as several workers moved from the side of the diner to his trailer door. They all had chains and long prods just like he had used earlier. They were moving whatever was inside to the back storage room. I pretended to get up and get a refill, and walked straight toward the cowboy, sliding right beside him to whisper. "Is that what I think it is?" I asked. "Leave now," he said. He was almost begging me. The shrieking and scratching I heard earlier was now coming from the kitchen. Then I heard the sound of a grinding saw. Buzz! It was cutting against bone. I dropped my glass. Smash! I looked at the cowboy. His eyes were whiter than a sheet. The doors to the kitchen opened, and the cook looked out with blood covering his face and apron. I didn't have to be told what to do this time. I moved to the door and stumbled through the dark parking lot. I was panting like an Olympic marathoner. I grabbed a hold of the side of the truck and then looked toward the back. The doors were still open. I froze as I heard more growls coming from inside. I reached into my pocket and took out a pocket knife, walking toward the door. My truck was only 30 feet away, right on the other side. I kept my eyes on the shimmied door at all times, using my phone to illuminate the darkness and see what was on the other side. It was so fucking dark. I could hear the snaps and the yelps. I stumbled toward my door and climbed into my cab. When the headlights came on, I saw exactly what they were hauling. Gray, scaly skin, long, wretched tail with bones protruding out of the side. But a face and chest like that of a man. It looked toward me with eyes that were begging. I pressed down on my air brakes and backed away. It struggled against its chains louder as I saw the cook look toward the road. I didn't stop until the diner was well out of sight. Until this morning, I haven't slept a wink. My hands are still shaking even as I try to type this. I know pretty soon I will have to call my boss and explain why I went against DOT regulations. I'm not sure what I will say, but one thing is certain. I won't be going down Clear Creek Road again